Live from Joe's mom's basement, it's the Stacking Benjamin Show. I'm Joe's mom's neighbor, Doug, and are you ready for student loan payments to resume? Wait, wasn't that a law that passed? Yeah, the Supreme Court struck that down. Wait, but isn't there another plan? It turns out there is, but we'll sort out all of your options on today's show with debt attorney extraordinaire, Leslie Tayne. For our TikTok Minute, we'll share an ingenious product you can buy for your mental health. And in our headlines, all of your favorite stock indexes are rebalancing. What does that even mean? We'll share. Plus, we'll throw out the Haven Lifeline to a lucky stacker. And of course, I'll save time for some trivia that is nothing less than brilliant. And now, two guys who are ready to be the brilliant beacons of hope for a better financial future for us all. It's Joe and O-J-J-J-J-G.
Hey, Doug, turns out the hyperbole in your open goes to 11. Fantastic.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I'm just getting warmed up.
Welcome to the Stacking Benjamin Show, the greatest money show on earth. I am Joe Saul-Sehy, Average Joe Money on Twitter. Easy for me to say. We have got the Monday awesomeness coming your way with Leslie Tayne working through what's going on with student loans. Turns out, they're going to be asking us for money now. If we've got student loans, apparently we got to pay those. 1 star. I got to give this whole student loan process 1 star.
Not a fan of student loans?
No. Well, I'm a fan of student loans. I'm just not a fan of this idea of repayment.
Interest.
Yes. I'm very interested in not repaying. How do I continue that strategy? And Leslie will be coming down the stairs to the basement here shortly. But before that, OG, I think we seriously need to have a talk with Mom about the rules. I thought maybe we sit Mom down and we talk about vacuuming the basement. Maybe we tell her a little bit about this.
I don't think she'll get the message, though.
Well, if she doesn't, we just, that's like the left hook. Then we hit her with this.
We should punch Mom.
It's probably not
highly inadvisable.
Do not.
She might also have to turn the volume up to hear it over the vacuum, Ma.
But still, we'll play it for her. Here it is. No? You still think she won't get it?
It's a valiant effort.
Leslie Tayne coming down to the basement. Before that, a big headline. So let's get this party started.
Hello, darlings. And now it's time for your favorite part of the show, our Stacking Benjamin's headlines.
Our headline today comes to us from Reuters. This is from about a week ago. Wall Street heavyweights mixed ahead of the NASDAQ 100 rebalance. Reuters reported then shares of Wall Street's most valuable companies were mixed Friday before last ahead of a rebalance of the NASDAQ 100 index to address the benchmark's overconcentration. Reason we didn't cover this, OG, in an earlier headline is this is not news that you should ever react on. Clearly, Reuters reporting that the markets did not react to this. But the thing is, most stackers don't realize that indexes, in this case the NASDAQ, but also the S&P 500 is getting ready to add, as we're reporting on our Stacking Deeds sister show, getting ready to add REITs and real estate in general as one of the categories that are in the S&P 500. These indexes, OG, are actually not as static as people think they are. They are kind of self-cleaning. Like as a company in the S&P 500, as an example, as a company underperforms, if it underperforms for long enough, OG, they take it out. I mean, this is another cool thing about indexing is weeding the garden gets a heck of a lot easier.
Well, it's nothing that you have to do. And if you try to, use that information, it's very difficult to make investment decisions based on, these, articles about rebalancing and that sort of thing, because it's already happening for you. And to your point, it's like, you don't have to worry about trying to keep track of which companies are doing what. It's automatically handled for you.
we often find when we talk to stackers that have individual stocks, OG, that they will go, oh, I should have gotten rid of that a long time ago, right? I mean, buying individual stocks might give you some upside, but also if you've got a full-time job, if you're working in another field, you got to keep track of that garden. You got to keep weeding the garden. And this is, we talk about so many upsides of indexing. This is one that's just a hidden thing. You could hold on to the S&P 500 for 20 years and it'll change every year and you don't have to do a thing.
Yeah, twice a year, as a matter of fact. So it'll change 20 times in 10 years. It'll change 40 times in that 20 years. But the funny thing is when you look at individual stock picking, right, and you say, okay, I want to own, this position, you probably would own it if you had a S&P fund or a Russell 2000 fund or something like that, right? I mean, there's the likelihood of you owning it is pretty high. So you're participating in it. What you're saying by having individual positions is I want to overweight in this idea or in this thing. And sometimes you're right with that. But a lot of times it's very difficult to pick that horse in advance. So I don't know why you'd try.
Well, and this is what's frustrating is so many investors will own an index, they'll own a fund, and yet they will buy and sell in and out of that fund. And if you own the S&P 500, like the S&P 500 makes these moves. The NASDAQ in this case, with this particular headline, makes their rebalancing move based on data that they have. Often, OG, I talk to people about why they make a move. They're like, oh, my gut feels like this stock's going nowhere.
Yeah. The old gut index. So that is.
So wait a minute. So I have an index that is professionally deciding when to change the weighting, when to do what they do. And I'm going to second guess that person. And heck, we talk about active funds often underperforming these indexes, and people even do it with these active funds. So I have a collection of stocks. I have a manager who manages these stocks, and I'm going to buy and sell because I'm smarter than the manager. I know more than they do. Yeah.
Yeah. It is kind of interesting when you look at it and look at just the sheer quantity of positions that you actually have, right? Parts of. You buy an S&P 500 fund, total market fund, or small company fund or something like that. You might have 8,000 or 9,000 different stock positions in your portfolio on 3 different line items. And meanwhile, you're going, I think I want to trade this today. It's like, what are you doing? Just invest the money.
Sit down, invest the money, and let these indexes take care of it for you. We recommend something called an investment policy statement that people use when they're building a portfolio. That's where you set up your portfolio in a way that you're setting certain conditions. Can you talk for a second about an investment policy statement and how using indexes might work in an investment policy statement?
Well, I think the part you want to start with is how much money do I need to make to reach my goals? When you look at what you're trying to accomplish, let's say you're 30 years old and you're going, I think I want to retire when I'm 60 and I want this type of lifestyle and that sort of thing. You can work backwards to find out the rate of return that you need to accomplish your goals. I think people start with the wrong side of it. They think, well, how risky am I? Well, how risky do you have to be? That's really the question. If you're not risky enough and you never reach your goals, I guess that was pretty risky. Right.
Right.
It's like, so you have to start with, well, what am I trying to get to? So you can just figure out, and do some calculations, how much, what's inflation and how much income do I need in 30 years from now? So how much money do I need? And then you can extrapolate from that. How much do I have and how much am I saving? And then how much does it have to grow? Because it's going to have to do something. You're going to have some sort of market growth, some sort of return on your savings, because it's not possible for you to save all of tomorrow's future money today. There's not enough money. You don't make enough. You have to have the power of compounding. So then you start with how much do I need in terms of return, and then look at the kind of big buckets. We just use basically 4 big areas to think about: big companies and small companies, US and non-US. So you can kind of make a little quadrant there of those things and say, well, what allocation or what percentage of those big rocks allows me a high likelihood of getting the return I need for my, 30-year time horizon. An investment policy statement is just you writing it down on a piece of paper that says, I will do this. It doesn't have to be fancy. It doesn't have to have, lots of pages or disclosures or anything like that. I mean, just write it on your mirror, with lipstick or something. I will invest 60% of my money in large U.S. stocks.
That's how OG did it right there.
That's
he
it.
Just took his lipstick out and put it on the mirror, and we love this way of investing because I know a lot of the stackers out there, especially the new ones, are like, how do I know when to use these indexes? Don't start there. I love starting with what you need because then the indexes pick themselves. Because then you're asking the question, OG. The question you're not asking is this good or bad? You're asking the question, does this meet my end goal?
Yeah, does it fit?
So, things will weed themselves out. Instead of freaking out about all the different investments out there, you can now narrow it down to just a few indexes. We will dive more into that in our newsletter, the 201, that comes out every Tuesday, Thursday. And we have Kate's birthday bash going on right now. Our marketing director, Kate, who is having a milestone birthday. We're giving away some Sennheiser headphones. So if you've been thinking, you know what, I really need the 201, but I keep forgetting. Now's a good time. You want to get in there by Saturday of this week to make sure that you get registered. If you already get the 201, we remembered you too. Kate said, hey, if they refer a friend, we'll give them and the friend also a ticket into our giveaway for the Sennheisers. Head to stackingbenjamins.com/201 or stackingbenjamins.com/birthday bash. Either one of those will get you signed up. And by the way, if you get the 201, remember, use your own referral code to make sure that you get credit. And that is inside every episode of the 201. You just click in the 201, go about halfway down, and you'll see your own referral code is right in the one we send you. Everybody gets one that's a little different. Time now for our TikTok Minute. This is the part of the show where we shine a light on some TikTok person either sharing something brilliant or hashtag brilliant online. OG, I'm going to ask you not the regular question. Do you prefer spending money on experiences or on things?
Yes.
Correct. Well, they say that
he was answering that before you even finished. Do you prefer spending money? Yes.
I'll take it. Oh, wait
I'm a fan.
Yes.
I'm a fan.
Well, how about something like this that maybe bridges, but bridges a couple things. It helps out with family relations. It makes sure that you have a great experience. And well, let's listen in. This is a service that this guy provides that some of our stackers might be interested in.
Okay, for $500, we arrest you in front of your wife or your girlfriend. We come in hot. Police cars, siren lights, uniform, handcuffs, radio going. Read Miranda. We'll even tase you for an extra $25, but there's a different waiver for that. We leave under very confusing circumstances, so it's hard for them to track you down. Take you to a campsite that's paid for, tent, beer, bait, fishing license, fishing equipment, and on Monday at around noon, we release you at the Waffle House, and we just say it was a big misunderstanding. Okay, for $500.
How about that, huh?
Sign me up.
Absolutely. The first comment on here, OG, says, my guy's about to be a millionaire in about an hour.
Yeah, I think so.
Maybe.
We could all do that.
Second one says, I want my phone outside the jail so when she looks at the location, I'm at the jail all weekend. just like somebody thinking this
Somebody's
completely
thought this through.
There's a little Dropbox, little locker, like at when we were at Cedar Point, where you put all your stuff, and it's just a little locker, and then you come and unlock it. Come get your.
It is. And by the way, lots of women on this saying, why does that have to be boyfriend or husband? I want this deal. Like, I think you're missing half the audience if you just go with the men. In fact, there's a woman says, is there a weekly or monthly package? I want the platinum. It wouldn't be funny if like every third week your boyfriend or girlfriend's getting tased. And you're like, what? How come it's a misunderstanding every second week?
Every time.
Yes, might end up being better for your health to just get out of the relationship. Oh my God! The next one says, "Who do I call and can I pay double to stay longer?" Like that'd be other people asking if it can be at work.
Yeah, this guy's not charging enough.
No, clearly. far more demand for this than we thought. Well, coming up next, we've got the student loan crisis back in the headlights. This thing that I might have to repay my debt. What the heck is that all about? OG, attorney extraordinaire Leslie Tayne going to join us. But before we get there, Doug, I think you've got some trivia for us.
Sure do, Joe. Hey there, stackers. I'm Joe's mom's neighbor, Doug, and I'm hoping Leslie Tayne can clear up all this confusion about student loan repayments because I am super worried about mine. Seems like the only people who truly care about me aren't Joe and OG or even Joe's mom. It's my student loan servicing company. Yeah, they call me nonstop. Plus, I truly worry about repayment. I mean, who can afford to even add in a student loan payment with all the inflation we've had? But I know I'm not here to complain about student loans. I'm here with your trivia question. So let's tackle that, shall we? And to tie this into today's show, let's go with a student loan question. Which profession's practitioners take out the highest amount of student loan debt? I'll be back with the answer right after I call and see just how much my loans are going to cost me each month. Hey there, stackers. I'm master budgeter and student loan disposer, Joe's mom's neighbor, Doug. Well, I just got some bad news. It turns out my balance is way higher than I thought, and I'm going to seriously have to watch how I spend my money. Oh, man. The last time I had a conundrum this big, it was the time I had to choose between the popcorn shrimp appetizer at the Sizzler and the coconut shrimp. And everyone knows I love them both. Well, I can't solve this one the same way by ordering both. And I also will probably never be able to order both again because get this, my student loan bill? Yeah, I owe a whopping $286 on my student loans. Still, after all these years, that means I have to add an amazing $4 a month for the next 8 years to the old budget. Ouch! Now, don't get me wrong, this isn't close to some of your debt. Seriously, I don't know how you do it. Listen to today's trivia answer. The question was, which profession has the highest average balance of student loan debt? Well, with an average of $292,000 in student loans when they finish, number one with a bullet are dental students. Doctors in general have over $200,000 in debt, but interestingly, nurses usually have a very low student loan balance when compared to many other professions. So are student loans going to get deferred again? What should our strategy be? Here to answer those questions and more, say hello to attorney Leslie Tayne.
I'm super happy she's back with us here. Leslie Tayne joins us in Mom's Basement. How are you?
Good. Great. How you doing? Having a great summer.
Well, me too. You having a great summer helping a lot of dental students out of their debt. Have you had many dental people that have had big time debt problems?
Yes, I have. Many, many dentists with hundreds of thousands of dollars of debt.
Wow. That means they need to, I don't know, recommend braces more often for more
Do a lot of drilling.
Do a lot of
They're getting their teeth kicked in by the financial industry.
Right. All right, Leslie, walk us through this. So it appears we might have to repay, but let's begin at the beginning. President Biden and the administration had this great thing, letting a lot of people either defer longer, maybe release some debt. That all got knocked down by what? The Supreme Court?
Yes, the Supreme Court decided that the Biden administration did not have the authority to act and make that determination that there should be student loan forgiveness on the federal student loans. So that's long gone now.
Okay, so that means that now we may have to repay. But now I'm seeing lots of headlines about the administration has another plan and that there's a good, well, I don't know if it's a good possibility or not. Are we going to see a plan make it through Congress, or should I get ready to pay my bills?
So I'm of the opinion that one should be ready to pay their bills, because even if something makes it through Congress, it's not going to be a widespread debt relief program where you're going to get all of your student loan debt forgiven. What they're talking about, the programs that they're talking about, are making it easier to pay back, widening some of the programs so that more people can apply and more people qualify for some of the programs that they have. But it is not the same program that was offered and then shut down by the Supreme Court. That was a forgiveness program where, based on income, you could get forgiveness up to $10,000 or up to $20,000. That is completely off the table. What they're talking about really is, again, widening the berth of the opportunity for different programs.
Gotcha. Oh,
Get
gee.
ready to pay.
Yeah, well, I like what Leslie's saying. Let's widen this out a little bit more than student debt, which is, when you build your financial plan, I like this idea of plan for the worst, like Leslie's talking about, and hope for the best.
Well, and it wasn't just, but 3 or 4 years ago when you were already paying these bills, or a lot of us were paying anyway, and then they went away. Some people kept on saving the money into a special place, a savings account or investment account or something like that, to be able to, keep that muscle going. We're running out of days now. I think when's the payback time? October, I think, is what I think I've heard in terms of the time frame. I'm thinking about this from the perspective of somebody who went from nothing, or is going from nothing to like $1,000 a month or $800 a month, some pretty substantial, payback, cash flow. I would start working on that now, in terms of like building the strength to be able to pull that off in October. If I'm right, and it's the 1st of October, you've got August, September, and October to kind of get yourself up and running. Maybe you can't pull off $800 a month right now, but maybe you can save $300, and then in September save $500, and then by the time you get to October, you can kind of figure out the budget to make it work, as opposed to October 1 or October 15, whenever it's due. Oh, boom! Here's a big giant bill that you haven't been paying for a long time. What
are some of those things we should be focused in on with, as OG's talking about this runway to October?
So I would agree with all that. The payments are supposed to resume sometime in October, after October 1st, but interest starts again in September. So if you can make a payment, if you have the money to pay off your student loans, and some people have been saving. I actually have a veterinary client who has been saving for the last 3 years, and she has over almost $250,000 left on her student loans, and she is going to pay it off.
Wow.
Right as soon as the interest rate is going to kick back in September 1st. So if you've been saving and you have the money, it's a great time to pay off or pay down the student loans. It is a fabulous time to put money into a savings account, because basic savings accounts are paying between for around 4%. So it's a great time to put money in a savings account and use that to help pay your student loans. You can prepay your student loans. That's over the course of the last 3 years, there was no rule that said you weren't allowed to pay. There was just no requirement to pay. So you could have been, and some people have been, chipping away at the balances, because when interest kicks back in, it's going to kick back in on whatever's remaining. So if what's remaining is less because you paid it down, then overall your interest will be, the overall amount that you ultimately pay will be less, because interest will be on lesser balance. Hopefully that makes sense.
It does make sense. It seems to me, when you and I had a great discussion on Instagram, we did an Instagram live with some stackers, and they asked some phenomenal questions. If you want to hang out with us on Instagram, get our welcome kit, stackingbenjamins.com/welcome. But Leslie, you were telling people there too, it's been a long time since you may have paid your student loan. You might want to contact the servicer.
Absolutely. So many people have moved around, and servicers are changing. And some of the programs are changing. So the names of the programs are going to change. So if you've moved around, or you're not sure that your servicer is the same one from before, it is a great time to contact the servicer and make sure that your information is up to date, that they have your current mailing address, email address, that you can log into your account appropriately, and that you have the information you need for the newer programs that are coming out. Some programs have to be applied to, some are going to be automatic. So, and your finances may have changed over the last 3 years, putting you into possibly allowing you to qualify for some of the newer programs. So it's a great time to reach out. I wouldn't recommend waiting to the last minute, because a lot of people wait to the last minute, and you could find it very difficult to get in touch with the student loan servicers. They could be bombarded. So, there's definitely something to be said about getting ahead of the pack.
Well, plus, I think the quicker you know what the burden's going to be and make sure everything's right, the better you can focus on what OG's talking about, which is your strategy. Now, let's say that I'm on the opposite side of that. I'd love to be that veterinarian that's going to pay off $250,000 of debt in one fell swoop. How kick-ass is that? But let's say I'm on the other side of that. I hear that number, Leslie, and I'm like, there's no way I can come up with it. What are my options?
So there are so many options, and it's going to be dependent on your income. So that your options have to be discussed with the servicer, because again, there's new programs and some confusion and some changes to existing programs like the public student loan forgiveness program. They're changing some of the parameters to that, meaning that used to be full-time work. Now they're saying anything over 30 hours, so that might change your qualifications for that type of program. You have to reach out to the servicer and discuss it. But in order to be able to discuss it intellectually and understand what really where you're at, you have to have not only your budget, but you have to have your tax returns and your income. You need to know how much money comes into your household and goes out in order to know, what am I going to qualify for? Because they're going to ask you the first question about how much do you make, and if you can't answer that question, I know it sounds crazy, but there's a lot of people who can't answer the question about how much they actually make.
Well, our number's 0. I mean, we're podcasters, Leslie. We don't make anything.
Okay, so if you make 0, that's still a number that would qualify you for certain programs.
Perfect.
See, now you don't have to pay back that debt right away. But your interest will still accumulate. So if you don't pay anything, by the time you do earn money, you'll owe a lot more.
She's just full of good news, isn't she?
That's right. Well, that means being underpaid is still glass half full, Doug. That's what that means. Glass half full.
Yes. There's lots of ways to look at your income.
Now, let's say that I have enough money to pay some of my debt, but not all of it. I can pay my student loans or my credit cards. I can pay my mortgage or my student loans or my credit cards. Is there a hierarchy to what gets paid and what triage I might do if I can't pay everything?
So the recommended payment structure, if you're going to look at it like a pyramid, is you have to pay your rent, you need housing, food, shelter. Those are priorities, certainly over the student loans and credit cards. And in the general public's view, it would be your best interest to be able to, keep a roof over your head. If you're at the point where you really can't you're having trouble really meeting your basic needs like that, you're in a different position. And that's, at that point, you really have to take a look at what's going on, what the income is, and which ways you can try to turn that around and cut expenses from either taking in roommates or living with family or consolidating your bills some way, extra jobs, trying to earn more money on side gigs or other things. You have to obviously take care of your basic needs. But when it comes to making decisions about, let's say, student loans versus credit cards, sometimes there's not necessarily a right way, which works best. Some people come to me and they say that they're using credit cards to live off of, so they need to use the money to pay down the credit card so that they can then use the credit card to charge the things that they've been charging. So that's a budgeting issue too. So that's a cash flow and budgeting underlying issue. So in that case, that person would likely choose credit cards over student loans. But if you have extra money and you can budget and you can balance the two, it really should be a balance between what's going to credit cards and what's going to student loans.
It seems like, you recommended earlier contact the servicer, right, before student loan repayments happen. If you're struggling, I would imagine contacting those servicers is probably a big option too, because they might have, I would imagine they must have some things that you can do.
Yep, you'll have much more flexibility contacting a student loan servicer than you will with your credit card companies and your mortgage, for sure. But believe it or not, it's I don't want to use the term easier, but it's less challenging to negotiate with your credit card companies than it is with federal student loans. There's no negotiation of that debt, despite what people think. Private student loans is a different ballgame, but you cannot negotiate the balances on your federal student loan debt. On credit cards, you can ask for changes to the structure of what's going on if you're current and certainly if you're behind. So definitely reaching out. But if you reach out and you tell your student loan servicer or your creditor that, you are, and let me tell you, especially your credit cards, they can see what you've charged. If you just spent the summer in Europe, it's not going to be a good argument on why you can't pay your student loan debt. So, and I see this all the time about what people consider wants and needs. And if you're going to go to your student loan servicer and say you don't feel like working full time, and you can only find a part-time job, you're going to be challenged.
Sounds like me.
I was wondering why you had your hand
You don't
in
feel
the
like
air.
working, you only want to work part-time. I read this morning on lazy girl jobs, so I'm not sure if you went to your federal student loan service or any of your creditors and said, hashtag, lazy girl job, and that's why you can't pay your bills, that they're going to be particularly understanding about giving you, different options. So obviously, you've been given credit. That's kind of a grown-up thing, and it's an obligation, and it needs to be paid back. And you cannot rely on the government to wipe out all your debt or forgiveness programs. So you have to find a balance between what works with your lifestyle, your budget, and obviously the willingness on the part of creditors to give you reprieves with the monies that you owe.
I can't just tell them that life is cheaper in Spain, Leslie. I can't say that, standard of living is less.
Life is better working remotely. You didn't hear that?
That's right. Absolutely.
I was thinking about all of the new people that have graduated college since this took place. And I remember the difference when I was in college. There was a difference between subsidized loans and unsubsidized loans, right? In terms of how the interest is accumulated and that sort of thing. You mentioned earlier that the interest was going to kick back on in September. Is this one of those situations where it's like, I graduated in 2019. I've been deferred this whole time. I've never made a payment. Am I going to get hit with 3 years of interest all at one time? Or has this been zero interest the whole time and now it's just going to start for the first time?
So I actually living that dream. Three of my children graduated from college during the last few years. So and all of them have federal student loans. So it's not going to be an interest from the day of the original CARES Act back in March of 2020. The interest is going to start from the September 1st. So whatever your balance is, if you owe 10 grand, it's going to be interest from that 10 grand. So that would be quite a punishment. And then how would they calculate it? It'd be super complicated because the challenge now is that interest rates 3 years ago were super low and historically low. Now they're historically high. So the challenge is that now that interest is going to kick back in, it's going to probably be at double or maybe even triple interest rates that you saw 3 years ago. So that's why paying it down would be the ideal position to take, because interest is now historically high and student loans do flow with current interest rates.
Right. I was going to say the furniture store figures out how to hit me with all that interest at the end of
right.
It's like they say no interest, no payments for 12 months, and then at the end of the 12th month, it's like, well, that couch costs 3 times as much now because you didn't make any payments. I don't understand what happened.
That would be challenging. It would be quite a job for the federal government to figure out everybody's interest. And considering everybody has, in some loans, have different interest rates.
Yeah.
Subsidized versus unsubsidized, that's who's paying the interest. But to figure that out would be, but it would also be a bit of a punishment. I don't know that would fly, and I think that would be kind of like a kick in the behind, on the way out of having 3 years of no interest.
The federal government kicks you in the behind every so often? Come on.
What?
Come on. Who knew?
I've never experienced that.
Who knew?
Around April 15th, something like that.
Leslie, if somebody's really struggling with debt, whatever type of debt, and they need better help in their corner, how do they find you?
So lots of ways to find me. So certainly you can find me in any type of search engine with my name at taynelaw.com, on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn, lots of ways to find me. And we always have, really great suggestions. If it's not something we can help you with, we will send you to other resources. So feel free to reach out anytime. You can certainly send us messages, email us, and we're happy to talk about the different types of resources and where to find help with your student loans.
Well, speaking of resource, thanks for being a huge resource for our stackers today and sorting this out. Unfortunately, it sounds like we should get ready to pay the bill.
It is time to pay. Time to figure out. It's stressful. There's no doubt that a lot of people are panicking right now because budgets are tight. You talked about inflation. The cost of goods and services is up. Interest rates are higher. So interest rates are higher on anything that you're buying. So it's definitely a stressful time for those with debt and now facing student loan debt and repayments, especially if your income has gone up or you got married. That's going to be a consideration. So a tough time for a lot of people. But don't hide from it.
Joe, I got a question for Leslie before she leaves.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Leslie, on Long Island, when does the weather get too brick to leave your house and go spend some guap on a slice?
The hell are you talking?
Are you making fun of my Long Island accent? You got that G perfect.
I am a master of voices here, and nobody believes it.
And just so you know, Leslie, he's an equal opportunity. He'll do Wisconsin. He'll take down.
I nail Wisconsin.
I'm not offended. I'm proud of my Long Island accent. So those who are not from New York think that it's like a Bronx or a Brooklyn accent, which it definitely is not. It is Long Island to the T. But it's no longer the 80s, so like that stereotype of a girl with like really big hair. So
yeah, your hair is not nearly big enough.
I'm never giving up this accent.
She can't even try. We will link to Leslie on our show notes page at stackingbenjamins.com. So all those links that you're looking for, just head to our show notes page. Leslie, thanks for hanging out with us again and helping us.
Of course. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Big thanks to Leslie for hanging out with us. Our average stacker's got a lot of planning to do in the next couple months.
Yeah, I was kind of torn on this over the years. People, should I pay it down? Should I keep on saving it? Should I invest the money differently? This payment amount that I've had. And I don't think that any of us could have predicted that the interest rates were going to go up so much. And, maybe yours are fixed and that's great, or you refinanced them. But kind of everything's back on the table now again, like she was saying, trying to requalify for different programs and figure out what your payment's going to be, but not always is the lowest payment the best option, because the hidden thing that Leslie said there was that if you qualify for some sort of deferment, the meter's still running on interest. And when we hear these stories of people who graduated college with $200,000 of student loans and they're 50 years old and now they have $800,000 of student loans, the reason that happened was because they, the meter's running the whole time, and so there's a risk with saying, well, I'll take the lowest payment possible, because you may not be making any progress whatsoever. And eventually they get you, they get you in Social Security at the end. So one way or the other, the government gets their money. So make a plan for it.
Hey, let's throw out the Haven Lifeline and tackle some of life's most important questions. Our friends at Haven Life Insurance Agency, Doug, they put what you value first.
Those really bright orange golf balls.
So when the grass is long, you can actually
the trees.
Find them in the rough. I was playing, Cheryl and I were playing disc golf the other day, and I threw one that I thought was right in a great, so I couldn't find it. Like this big white disc. Couldn't find it anywhere. It had somehow made its way, like, wedged under this little pile of leaves. Like, I totally could. Even if it were bright orange, I still couldn't have found it.
You lost me at disc golf.
When you finished disc golf, did you take out your hacky sack and start listening to the Grateful Dead?
Oh my God! There's so many people play disc golf. You just offended like half of our listenership.
I that's the stereotype, but I've played it a couple times. It's a lot more fun than you think it's going to be. It's pretty
cool. I got
to
tell you too, it's harder than you think it is.
Yeah,
I see these things that goes par 3. Yeah, I could hit that in 6. Mm-hmm. Like it is. I'm nearly as bad at disc golf as I am at real golf. Nearly as bad.
That's not possible.
You guys have both played real golf with me.
I bet he's faster at disc golf though, or OG.
What are you talking about? I play bad golf fast. I do not sit and line up my shot because I know it's going nowhere good anyway.
How about Brian Harmon waggling the waggle counter on Brian Harmon at the Open?
11 or 13 or something.
Yeah.
Jeez. Holy cow.
At least he won.
It says here it's your loved ones in your time.
Okay, sure. We'll go with that.
It's why they made buying quality term life insurance at Haven Life actually simple. Head to stackingbenjamins.com/Haven Life now for your free quote. Love what they're doing at Haven Life because they're committed to offering insurance the modern way. They have streamlined the questionnaire so it's very quick. It's all online. You get an instant coverage decision for affordable prices, and you get this done with a company that is insurance through Mass Mutual, more than 160 years old. stackingbenjamins.com/Haven Life. Get it done, people. Today, we're going to throw out the lifeline to Anonymous. Hello, Anonymous.
Hi, Joe and OG. I was wondering if you could explain more about the efficient frontier. I have heard you mention it, and I have looked it up to try to learn more. And I get the idea of sort of taking, I guess, funds, if you will, kind of the most efficient mix of funds or ways of investing to, to get to financial independence or whatever the goal is. But I could not figure out or understand what would actually be in someone's portfolio if they were trying to invest using sort of the efficient frontier theory, if I understood that correctly. So could you speak more about what that actually means? Thank you.
Thanks for the call. And again, just like on Monday's call, G, we even talked efficient frontier in some time. So what is it, and how do we, what type of investments is in your efficient portfolio?
Well, I think to kind of start this out, I think it's kind of interesting just to kind of maybe set the stage for what the heck are we talking about here? And at the easiest level, let's just kind of graph out the relationship of risk, or what we might call volatility, right? The ups and downs of your portfolio with how much return potential you have. Arguably, if you had all of your money in cash, you could kind of graph that and say, all right, very little volatility, very little return. If I had all of my money in the tiniest, brand newest individual stock in the universe, high return opportunity, high volatility, right? So those might be the two extremes of that graph. And so every point along the way is an opportunity to have a little bit more return with a little bit more volatility, right? So as you add more return potential, you're going to add more bouncing around, if that makes sense, a little bit more ups and downs. So as you look at all the different types of investments that are out there, and we could just start out with a really simple one, just say big companies and small companies. There is a mixture of big companies and small companies that produce different amounts of risk and return based on how you allocate to those with those percentages, right? If you have 90% of your money in big companies and 10% of your money in small companies, it will produce a certain risk and return profile. So as you add other asset classes, as you add maybe international investments, or you add brand new countries or, emerging countries, and you add big and small companies within those, or you add fixed income, or you get esoteric and start adding things like commodities or private equity or venture capital. And you can see there's lots of different asset classes that you can have here. The sprinkling of those things will add different risk and return profiles. And so the efficient frontier is basically an equation of what is the most efficient use of all of those different types of tools to achieve the highest level of return for that unit of risk. And the reality is that there's no right answer for it, because it's going to be different for everybody. And it's different based on the parameters that you put in there. If you say, I will only allow us to use 5% venture capital funds, that's going to have a different risk return profile than if you say, I'll allow 50% venture capital funds, and so on and so forth.
Well, it's also going to be different if you just say, I want to solve for an 8% return, period. I don't want to, I want the least risk with an 8% return, because I know 8% is what I need to safely reach my goal.
Yeah. And so it's, you can start there and say, I want 8% to reach my goal. What's the right collection of stuff to get me there? But then also it depends on how many tools do you want at your disposal? Yeah. You can say
private equity, no, thank you.
Right. If you start Xing things out, it's going to change the parameters. What's really interesting, I find, about the concept of the efficient frontier is that it actually doesn't end at cash. It actually ends, the most conservative portfolio that you can have that produces the best risk return profile is more of like a 20/80 portfolio. So you think about the graph, it doesn't go in a straight line. It actually ends at 20/80 and then curves back into the right, because it gets riskier with less return the less stock that you have below 20. So the most conservative that you should be is 20% stock. If you're like, I just want to be the most conservative I can, the right answer is about 20%. But the other thing that's really interesting is that there's not a profound difference as you get past about 80 or 90%. Yes, 90% gives you more return than 80 and 100 gives you more return than 90, right? That makes sense. But you can tell that the curve sort of flattens out at that point. So you make big changes when you go from 50 to 60% or 60 to 70 or 70 to 80, and smaller impacts to your overall return when you go from 80 to 90 or 90 to 100. But all of this to say, I think, Joe, you kind of cut to the end of this, which is you start with, what do I have to do to reach my goals? That's really where to start with all of this. Because if you start with what's the right allocation, the answer is it depends. Like it can be all over the board depending on what you're trying to aim for. So starting with the right return profile that you need to reach your goals based on how much you can save and based on how much you already have saved and the time that you have, I think is a better place to start, because it will narrow down your choices from infinitely all of the investments available to you to what are the ones that make the most sense,
People are wondering where to get these tools. You can find those on a lot of the traditional asset manager websites. You'll find some basic tools around what's my better asset allocation. There's a website called Portfolio Visualizer. It has a lot going on under the hood. So you'll need to do a lot of toggling. You'll have to spend a little while there, but you can go to Portfolio Visualizer. But any good financial planner will also have those tools available, and we'll be able to show you, okay, here's the investments you have that are working. Here's the ones that might need to move to reach that either better sleep at night factor. Because really, you're going to get two things, OG. You're going to get either the same return you get now, but less. I mean, assuming that you don't have it exactly, you're not exactly on that efficient line. You're either going to get less risk, same return, which is great. You'll sleep better at night, or better returns and no more risk than you're taking now. I mean, those are two basic things, but really what you're going to get is you'll start off with the goal of what you want. It'll be a separate point, and then that'll show you, okay, these are the investments historically that got you there. And then you start having a discussion about which investments need to stay and which ones need to go, because these ones work and these ones don't. So it becomes much easier to decide what asset classes I'm leaving. And to be clear, this doesn't recommend like General Motors stock. It's just going to say large company stock or large company growth stock.
I mean, and you can do that with individual stocks too, right? I mean, you can create that thing. I think overall, my thoughts on all of this have changed over the years, and being exactly technically perfect, I think, is pretty impossible.
It is impossible.
The guy who, I mean, really the point that drove this home for me. So the guy who created all this stuff, his name is Harry Markowitz, and he was awarded a Nobel Prize. He knew all of this, and not only knew it, but he proved it. And still, if you asked him how his investments were, he was 50-50.
So he doesn't use it.
Well, I'm sure he did to some extent, but he didn't use it to like get to the, exactly where is the finest point.
Yes.
More and more research and I think just all of our anecdotal collective wisdom suggests that everybody knows the right answer to a lot of this stuff. There are some people who don't know.
Listen, I will completely disagree here.
Well, let me finish.
Yeah.
What I mean by that is, we know that we need to save money. We know that we need to invest money. We know that we need to stay away from credit card debt. And we know we need to, live within our means and those sorts of things. And yet we still do things that are anti that. And no amount of like efficient frontierism and being exactly technically perfect on your asset allocation is going to make up for the fact that you're $1,000 a month short of your savings.
Right.
You can get, and this was also studied, the asset allocation accounts for 90% of your return. right? And so that's kind of the big thing that everybody points to. It's like, well, this is the thing that matters the most. The stock selection and timing and all that is like the other 9%. And that's true when you look at all of the other things being equal. But what we find is that it's not the asset allocation that's wrong, although quite often there's some improvements to be done there. It's the fact that you're way under saving, or you're way saving in the wrong place. All of your money is pre-tax. You don't have any money on the tax-free side or on the non-qualified side.
I agree with all that.
And so that's what I mean by we know. There's far fewer people, I think, that I run into that are like, okay, I've saved $11 million. It's all in cash. Now what? And far more people that I run into that are like, okay, I kind of sort of did what I could on the investment stuff.
Sure.
But I only am saving $200 a month. How am I doing? And it's like, well, you're way behind.
That's in the real world, though. That's in the real world.
That's where we live, man.
No, we actually don't. We have a bunch of people who are podcast listening nerds who spend a ton of time being very efficient in every other area that listen to the show. And then they go, no, VTSAX. I'm not doing crap above that. And you and I know that the efficient frontier is such a better way to go because these people have already done everything you're saying, OG. So in our little fishbowl community, I want to be clear to these people when you say, well, it doesn't really matter. Well, to you Uber geeks out there who do everything else correctly, but you ignore this because of some talking points you heard, you're wrong. You can pick up a bunch of extra money there. You can actually optimize in this area. And it just blows my mind why some of these people will optimize every single thing. But no. I'm going to stick with the beginner strategy. It's a great strategy. I'm not ripping JL Collins here. What I love about the simple path to wealth is it goes, hey, when you first start off, forget about asset allocation. Just buy the total market and you're going to go. And it's simple and you will make it. And you know what? He's not wrong. But when you've accumulated $1 million and you're still, I just put it all in VTSAX because I know simple about it. You wouldn't waste that money in any other area of your life, but you'll waste it here. And I just don't get it. So I just want those people to hear you correctly too.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. And there's certainly, there's certainly extremes on both sides. I think I suspect that in the general population, which includes people who don't listen to money podcasts or, in the general population,
you're spot on.
Yeah. And then in our space, I think that there's probably a little bit of both, although it would err to that side. It's almost like it's no different than saying, I'm never going to use credit cards because, Discover card points never got me retirement money. Like just stealing a line from Dave Ramsey, right? Like as your mantra. Like you're right. Absolutely. There's, having credit card debt is awful, but I went to Cedar Point with my kids. We got airline tickets, the park passes, stayed in the hotel, and I did it all on points. And it was like $3,000 worth of stuff that I didn't pay a penny for. So just to, I'm trying to compare it, I guess, a little bit to that to prove your point, which is to say that the beginner path is right, but also so is 201, and so is 301, and so is 401, and there's a place for all of those things basically. So don't just get kind of stuck in one dogma,
Yep.
as your life goes.
Thanks for the question, caller. And I hope that you gave your email to Gertrude when you filled out the form, because we want to send you a Haven Life Greatest Money Show on Earth t-shirt. And to get that and to have us answer your question, stackingbenjamins.com/voicemail if you would like us to answer your question as well. Great question about the efficient frontier. Hey, if you're not here to ask questions to us about profession or getting out of student loan debt, you're here because your plan needs to be a lot better. You need better people in your corner. OG and his team are taking clients. So head to stackingbenjamins.com/OG. That leads you to his team's calendar, and you can see how they can interface with you to help you make better financial decisions. We're already going into August. How have your decisions been so far? They need to be better. stackingbenjamins.com/OG. On a much lighter note, looking at the community calendar, You got till Saturday, everyone, to get in on Kate's birthday bash. Kate's birthday was on Saturday, but she's been very nice about this, OG. She said, you know what? We'll let people get in for another week. So stackingbenjamins.com/birthday bash. You sign up for the 201. You get a double whammy. Number one, you're going to get all those great links, deeper dives into what we talk about on the show so that you can actually dive in even more. But you'll also now, until Saturday, be signed up for these awesome Sennheiser headphones. And if you don't know Sennheiser, the Sennheiser is the brand of microphone that NPR uses to make those podcasts that are nearly as good as ours.
Close.
Guy Raz, he's okay.
But no cigar.
He's all right. Yeah. Roman Mars, he's fine.
Bruno Mars.
Bruno Mars.
Way better guy.
Do you think Bruno and Roman are related? Maybe.
Cousins.
They probably are. All right. Thanks so much for hanging out with us again, everybody. Coming up on Wednesday, OG and I have a top five. Top five. We're going to be talking a lot about advisors and your team the rest of the week.
I have a top 7.
All right. OG's bringing it. He's giving you 2 bonus ones, like the Baker's dozen, the Baker's 7. I don't know. But for today, we'll give you the top 3 things you should have learned today.
Half dozen, Joe. If the Baker's dozen is one more than an actual dozen, the Baker's half dozen would be one more than a half, which would be 7. Come on. Do I have to do math for you, too?
Though?
Well, do this. Tell us what we should have learned today, Doug.
Okay, fine. Well, Joe, first, take some advice from Leslie Tayne. Even if student loan debt relief does make its way through Congress, you should always have a plan to pay it off without help. If help does come, so much the better. But if you plan for help and it doesn't arrive, well, then you've got a big problem. Second, why use indexes for your investing? Well, among all of the other benefits, they're self-cleaning. Who has time for managing all the little things when an index can take care of it for you and for a lower fee than most other options? But the big lesson? Turns out that deferring my student loans can still be an option. The good news is that I'm only going to have to defer them for a few more months, until I win the lottery. Thanks to Leslie Tayne for joining us to talk about student loan debt. You can learn more about Leslie by visiting TayneLaw.com. That's TAYNE law.com. We'll also include links in our show notes at stackingbenjamins.com. Joe, this part of the credits is so important to me, I had to go put on my favorite shirt. Let's do this. This show is the property of SP Podcasts, LLC, copyright 2023, and is created by Joe Saul-Sehy. Our producer is Karen Repayment. This show was written by Joe Saul-Sehy with help from me, Doc G from the Earn and Invest podcast, and Lacey Langford from the Military Money Show. Kevin Bailey helps us take a deeper dive into all the topics covered on each episode in our newsletter called The 201. You'll find the 411 on all things money at The 201. Just go to stackingbenjamins.com/201. Tina Eichenberg makes the video version of this show. Once we bottle up all this goodness, we ship it to our engineer, the amazing Steve Stewart. Steve helps the rest of our team sound nearly as good as I do right now. Want to chat with friends about the show later? Mom's friend Gertrude and Kate Youngkin are our social media coordinators, and Gertrude is the room mother in our Facebook group called The Basement. So say hello when you see us posting online. To join all the basement fun with other stackers, type stackingbenjamins.com/basement. Not only should you not take advice from these nerds, don't take advice from people you don't know. This show is for entertainment purposes only. Before making any financial decisions, speak with a real financial advisor. I'm Joe's mom's neighbor, Doug, and we'll see you next time back here at the Stacking Benjamins Show.
Doug, that clearly your definition of a huge amount of student loan debt might be.
It's crippling to me.
A lot of people listening to that going, nah, I think I'm closer to that dental number than to the Doug number. Hey, the inspiration for why we were talking about that in the trivia wasn't just that Leslie was here. It was also, I remember, OG, in my early days as a financial planner, and when we were meeting with, we were having some meetings, and some of them would just go very bizarrely. I remember so many bizarre things, but this one, a friend of mine named Paul, fellow financial planner, was super excited because he had an estate planning issue, which generally, you know, much like people in the healthcare professions will get excited when they see a condition they don't get to work on much and they're able to help somebody in an area where maybe where maybe somebody, you know, didn't know where else to turn. You know, OG, when somebody has an estate issue, that can get kind of complex. And if they tell you on the phone they're coming in because of estate issues. And this was about stock in the company they work for, General Motors, which a lot of people in the, of course, Detroit area work for GM. So Paul comes out of this meeting and goes, oh, they had an estate planning issue. All right. Here was the problem. They had 3 kids and they needed to figure out how to divide the shares evenly among the kids. And Paul said to the client, okay, let's dive in. Let's figure this out, because I've helped people with this before. They're like, well, here's the problem. We have 3 kids and we have 2 shares.
Of GM?
Of GM. How do we separate 2 shares among 3 kids? And Paul said, we can do this one of 2 ways. We can buy a 3rd share.
Paul pulled $40 out of his pocket and said, here, I'll solve this problem.
or you could have the estate sell it and just divide the money. And that was their complex estate planning problem they couldn't figure out without... And don't get me wrong, guys, I'm not making fun of clients. People have issues, but that one, OG, might have been solvable.
We, I remember I was in a meeting with a young advisor. Part of my role at American Express when I was there was to train new advisors. And so the protocol, the way that we did it back then, was mostly on the job training, right? It was like, I will do all of your stuff and you just sit there and watch. And we had a client, and I don't remember for which advisor this was, but we had a client meeting and it was about their insurance and risk management. And they had a whole life policy that was not a good fit. We had kind of done the analysis and they didn't need the whole life policy. A term life policy would be fine. And, you know, and the whole life policy was drawing so much cash. You know, I mean, they were putting some big number, you know, $800, $900 a month into this thing.
Wow. Yeah.
And it's like, well, now if we knock that down to term, you have $850 a month to invest, and that's going to go in your Roth, and you're going to increase your 401k, and you're going to send your kids to college. Like this, the whole plan hinged on, let's get rid of this whole life policy because you didn't need it. And so we go through this whole thing about term and whole life and, you know, kind of dovetail into the cash flow nature of it and everything. And when you have life insurance, you don't want to get rid of the existing one until you get the new one in place.
Right. Yes.
Right. Because you don't know. I mean, you don't want to cancel one. You may end up needing it. So anyway, so we do the whole application thing. It all comes back approved. You know, everything's great. So the client comes back in. This is a big deal for this advisor because, you know, the whole plan, the relationship hinges on let's get rid of the New York life policy,
free up all this cash flow,
all the cash flow, and then you can accomplish all your goals. You know, this is it. And so the insurance gets approved long before the days of instant approval and do it online and all that sort of stuff. So the client's back in and we're like, okay, so we're just going to sign this. And then this takes the new policy. And then we're going to sign this. And this tells New York Life that you're going to cancel this policy. And then we've got this stack of forms here, and this will direct all that cash that you've been saving into all these other financial goals. You're going to
401k, Roth IRA, boom, boom.
And you know, I just distinctly remember like sliding the paper across the desk, right? It was like, and sign right here. And the woman looks at it and she says, well, so we're going to get rid of the New York life policy. I went, yep. That's I mean, we're trading it. We're not getting rid of the insurance.
Sure.
We still have insurance. It's still the same amount. It's still the same coverage, so on and so forth. But this is less, and et cetera. And she looks up and, as plain as she can say, goes, "But New York Life is the company that you keep." And I almost spit out my coffee. I was like, "Wait, did you just regurgitate a marketing line,
message?
a slogan?"
She should have followed it up with ba-dum-bum-ba-ba.
Yeah. I was like,
That's McDonald's.
I know it is McDonald's, but if she's
that's
regurgitating messages.
I'm like, that's a marketing slogan, right? I mean, and she's like, no, you're supposed to keep it. It says right there, it's the company you keep. I had to excuse myself. I had an urgent meeting back on planet Earth. And so needless to say, we are still hoping and praying for that family, that their New York Life policy accomplished all their goals for them, because that was we weren't going to do that. So
and that ends another episode of Stacking Benjamins, the only podcast you listen to.